Ruardean Hill in Gloucestershire. We removed from there to a house which was, we always described as being under the church hill. Here a big turkey, Rudy, a chicken, and I had a donkey.
What was the donkey's name?
I just called him Unedited. And he was very like a big rabbit. He got very long hair, and ears. In front of the house there was a quarry, and some distance from the house. And when it rained, it used to flood and get filled with water, and it used to drown the fowls. But the ducks used to swim, and they were all right. Then there was a stile, and we crossed over a brook, up a hill, and over a distant railway line, and through the kissing gate, over to Esther Bonner's house, who used to make bread. And I used to be warned that if I looked in the flour bins, I should go in head first. I said to her once, my grandmother used to tell my fortune, and I said to her, would you like my grandmother to tell you your fortune? And she said, well, my dear, my fortune's great, and if I won't work, I won't eat. That was the pronunciation there for eat, you see. It's a very nice old lady. And then over to
What
the
was her
left,
name?
Esther Bond. We always called her Old Esther Bond. And a little further on the left, was the blacksmith shop, Jack Hale, we used to call it. And we used to go into his stall. And sometimes, very bravely, I rode the horse's footlights, very, very boring. And he would let me blow the bellows. But I couldn't do them very well, because you have to be very strong. Sparks would fly all over. And as you kept on along that road, we came to the school I went to. It was not quite in Steno, where the mill was, but it was very near. And at the back of that again used to be a big pond. And when we had very hard winters in those days, it used to freeze over, and the caretaker would go and test it, and we were allowed to slide. Okay. Down there was a family that used to come to the school, and their grandmother was called Mercy Priest, and they said she was a witch. And I was very frightened of these children, because they used to say if I offended them, that their granny would put a curse on me. The old Forest Book Dean was full of superstitions, and everybody that was a little bit unusual was a witch, you see. We used to take our letters to school, and there was a place we had to get over a stile, and they were Cotswold walls, and you could walk along the top.
Dry stone.
Yes, dry stone walls, and you could run around the top of them. And they were low trees with spreading branches. We used to sit in those if we had our lunch, if we took our lunch to school. And we used to eat our dinner, and in this house, there was a tumble down, in this hame, there was a tumble down house.
What?
We called them hames. His enclosure, H-A-I-S. And in this hame, there was a tumble-down house which we liked. Overgrown rather with beautiful blackberries, great big blackberries. And my father told me that that was where an old charcoal burned.
Oh, so interesting.
And his wife used to make blackberry wine out of these blackberries that grew all around.
Mm-hmm.
They all made wine down there. Elderberry, blackberry, parsley, potato, cowslip,
Dandelion.
and yes, dandelion,
Elderberry.
burdock. And we used to go and gather herbs for my mother. And there was one little herb that I liked very much. And little tiny herb was called tormental. Yes, I don't know why it was called tormental, but we used to have that for aches and pains. We didn't have many doctors. They lived a long way, you know, sometimes 3 or 4 miles to the doctor. And where they all made herb tea. See, if you had anything the matter, like chamomile tea, white aura. Now, we always called this white round, and I was quite grown up when I realised that that was wrong. It was four round.
Yeah, I hope it was education.
When did the Boer War end?
Well, actually, there were two Boer Wars, but the more famous of the two is between 1899 and 1902, when it ended with the Treaty of Ruardean.
So I would be about 3 years old.
I suppose so, yes. Do you remember?
Yes, it must have been the Boer War because I can remember big bonfires on Harrowell. And I can remember children singing, "Poor old Kruger's dead." They didn't say Kruger, they said Kruger's dead. He died for the want of bread. He cut his throat with a bar of soap. Poor old Kruger's dead.
Did you join in the singing?
Oh no, I was watching. I was watching because we lived on Ruardean Hill, you see, at that time, I should think. But I don't remember taking part in any of the dancing around the bonfire.
But did someone take you and hold you in his arm?
Yes.
That you could
Oh yes, I was sitting on my father's shoulder. Up
That
on
was
my
excellent.
up on my father's shoulder, you see. Of course, shortly after that, we moved up to my grandmother's house because she was all alone.
What was your grandmother's name?
My grandmother's name was, her Christian name was Kathleen.
How unusual.
And first she was Mrs. Parsons, and when my grandfather died, she married again, and her name was Mrs. Baldwin. I remember moving up to this house and walking under the wood, and I wanted to carry something, and they said I could carry the frying pan. And I always remembered carrying the frying pan. I thought it was lovely to carry it. Yes, yes, but I was determined to carry something, you see. Of course, the rest of the furniture had gone all around the main road, but we just used to climb the hills, you know, just like goats, very short-footed, because it was very hilly. And then we moved to this, as I tell you, my grandmother's house. My grandfather built 4 houses. He bought the land when my grandmother and he were married, and he built 4 houses. And my grandmother lived in the one, and my mother's sister Emma lived in one, and her brother William, which we called Bill, Uncle Bill, lived in the other, and my grandfather's sister Leah Ward, she lived in the other, and of course they always said she was a witch, because
One of your grandmothers was a witch?
no, my grandfather's sister. She lived all by herself in one of my grandfather's houses, and the children used to tease her, you know, and run after her poultry and tap on her door. And of course she used to run after them with a stick and threaten what she would do if she could catch them. But she never caught them. They took good care, but of course she wasn't a witch. She was a nice old lady, but very teasing the children were, you know. Wasn't the year at my old home in the forest of Dean, the butcher came to kill pigs, sometimes 2 pigs. He came with what we called a bolting of straw. Killed the pig, and then he wrapped him all round the straw and set it up. When it was all burnt away, the pig was quite black. He was then put in a deep dolly cup, what we called a dolly cup, and pumice stone all over. After this, it was as white as snow. And then the butcher slit it down the middle, right from its neck right down the middle, and he put a rolling pin thing in it to force it open. Took all the inside out and hung it up by the tail, and it hung for 2 days. Then it came to cut it up. So there were joints of meat, and what was left were flitches of bacon. This I used to help my mother to chew. This was done with salt and saltpeter and brown outside today is wet. This wasn't. This was crisp and dry. We used to have this for breakfast, and it was cooked in a Dutch oven in front of the fire. Now, this Dutch oven was like a meat tin, and it had two supports at the sides, two uprights, and on these two uprights was a hood, and underneath this hood were little hooks, and we used to hang the bacon on those little hooks and put it in on a trivet in front of the fire. Those were the days at all. And that was a pig killing day. We had a bacon day. Now this bacon oven, it was made of brick, and the door was halfway up. It was like a little room, and we used to fill this full of wood, and when it had all burnt away, the bricks were white hot, and then we put the bread in. Mother used to make large cottage loaves, and these large cottage loaves were baked on a cabbage leaf. When the bread was cooked, there was no sign of the cabbage leaf, but the crust of that bread was something to remember. I've never tasted bread.
Cabbage leaf was under the loaf.
Under the loaf. It
On
stood.
top as well.
Oh no, it just stood on the cabbage loaf, and it was really beautiful. That bread was, and it would keep without going dry. They ordered it in Gloucestershire, but it seemed to be just a ways that they had, like burning the pig in straw. I don't think this is done in all houses.
Is it?
But it is a feature, and it really is lovely. And then we used to keep all these hams and such like, and we could have them for Christmas. And we also had a big turkey killing at Christmas. That was my mother's pin money, turkeys and things like that. She reared the turkeys and all like that. And we used to have an old woman called the doctor, and she used to come a day or two before Christmas, and she used to kill the turkeys. My father never killed them. And then she would stay and tell us how many. Well, we fought 15 we had. And, they used to call it stabling, they were all in straw, and the old woman, I don't know what my mother paid her, but she always had a turkey for Christmas. And we used to have people come all the way from Gloucester and Cheltenham, and they would say to my mother, would it be all right for me to have my turkey this year, Mrs. Knight? But they were regular standing orders, My father used to get up very early in the morning for the little tiny turkeys to chop up hard-boiled eggs for them, onions, very fine,
Did the little turkeys have a particular name? You don't call them turkeys.
Little turkeys.
Did you call them in any particular way?
Oh, yes, if you wanted the little tiny turkeys, we used to say, dear, 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 dear.
Suppose you wanted a large elderly person. How did you call the geese?
With the geese and the ducks, you always said, come lad, come lad, come lad.
And did they come?
Yes, and the chickens were the sheep were kept, like that. They all knew the calls. They all knew the call, and they would all come. I had a white cat called Snowball, and it was like a dog. It would round up the poultry at night and make them all go into their different. Someone gave it to me, and it was a lovely cat called Snowball.
Did you have a dog?
Oh yes, we had a big black retriever, and we called that Sweet. I don't remember many dogs, and we had an Airedale, I think, was called Quick. Now that was a funny name to call the dog.